First Contact Protocol. The first sign wasn't the ships themselves, but the way birds suddenly changed direction mid-flight. Marcus Chen noticed it from his bedroom window as he worked on his physics homework, watching the entire flock of starlings execute a perfect 90-degree turn as if responding to some invisible barrier. At 17, Marcus had spent enough time observing nature to know when something wasn't right. The Zephyrian invasion fleet materialized exactly 12 minutes later, emerging from folded space like water droplets forming on glass. Each vessel was a testament to an alien aesthetic that valued function over form, angular surfaces covered in what looked like living metal, shifting and adapting to Earth's atmosphere. The mothership, larger than Manhattan, positioned itself directly above the Pacific Ocean, its presence causing tidal disruptions that would puzzle oceanographers for weeks to come. Marcus lived in a small coastal town in Oregon, close enough to see the atmospheric distortions, but far enough to avoid the immediate military response. His parents were both at work, his mother at the hospital, his father teaching at the university. He was alone when the emergency broadcast system activated, the familiar tone replaced by something that made his teeth ache. Emperor Threkos Valzephyr stood on the bridge of his command vessel, 6 arms folded in contemplation as he studied the blue planet below. His species had conquered 17 star systems, each falling within standard parameters of resistance and eventual submission. Earth had been classified as a Type Ia civilization, barely space-capable, with primitive nuclear technology and fractured governance. The Conquest Protocol estimated 48 hours until complete planetary control. "Commence atmospheric entry," Threkos commanded, his voice resonating across multiple frequencies. His crystalline form stood 3 meters tall, each facet of his body capable of independent thought processing. The Zephyrians had evolved beyond biological constraints millennia ago, becoming living quantum computers housed in bodies of engineered crystal. Marcus watched through his telescope as smaller craft descended from the mothership. Unlike human aircraft, these moved without regard for physics as he understood it, stopping and starting instantaneously, turning at angles that should have torn them apart. One craft, more ornate than the others, headed directly for the coastline near his town. At the Cascade Valley Observatory, where Marcus volunteered on weekends, alarms screamed as instruments registered impossible energy readings. The facility's AI system, which Marcus had helped upgrade as part of his internship, began correlating data at unprecedented speeds. On pure instinct, Marcus grabbed his bicycle and headed for the observatory. If the world was ending, he wanted to understand why. The Emperor's personal craft landed in a clearing 2 miles from the observatory, its arrival marked by a perfect circle of crystallized sand. Threkos emerged alone, as was his custom when assessing new conquests. His security detail remained in orbit, monitoring from above. After all, what threat could a Type I species pose to a being who had transcended mortality itself? Marcus arrived at the observatory to find it abandoned, the staff having evacuated on military orders. But the systems were still running, still collecting data. His access codes still worked, a oversight in the chaos, perhaps, or simply because no one thought a teenager would return to work during an alien invasion. He began analyzing the incoming data, his mind racing as patterns emerged. The Zephyrian technology operated on principles that seemed to violate conservation laws, but Marcus noticed something the adult scientists had missed in their panic. The energy signatures showed periodic fluctuations, not random, but following a pattern reminiscent of quantum wave functions. He began writing equations on the whiteboard, his hand moving almost automatically as connections formed in his mind. Threkos detected the observatory's active sensors and decided to investigate. Such initiative was unusual in primitive species during first contact. Most either fled in terror or attacked in futile rage. Scientific curiosity in the face of overwhelming force suggested either foolishness or exceptional courage. When the Emperor materialized in the observatory's main room, passing through walls as if they were merely suggestions, Marcus didn't run. He turned from his equations, marker still in hand, and met the gaze of a being that defied every law of biology and physics he knew. "You're using quantum entanglement for your propulsion systems," Marcus said, his voice steadier than he felt. "But you're fighting the wave function collapse instead of riding it. That's why your smaller ships shimmer when they change direction." Thrakos paused, genuinely surprised for the first time in centuries. This primitive, this child by the standards of even his own species' youth, had deduced in minutes what had taken Zephyrian scientists decades to perfect. And more intriguingly, he had identified a flaw they had never recognized. "I am Emperor Thrakos Valzafir," the alien announced, his voice harmonizing in frequencies that made the air itself sing. "Your world has been selected for incorporation into the Zephyrian collective. Resistance is inadvisable." Marcus set down his marker and picked up a pen, clicking it nervously, a habit his mother always scolded him for. "I understand. But before you proceed, would you like to see something interesting? My name is Marcus Chen. By the way, I'm 17 years old, and I think your approach to faster-than-light travel could be improved by approximately 37%. The Emperor's crystalline form shifted, colors cascading across its surface in what might have been amusement or annoyance. In 17,000 years of existence, across countless worlds and civilizations, no one had ever responded to his declaration of conquest with an offer to improve his technology. "You presume much, Marcus Chen," Thrakos replied. "What could a species that has barely touched the void possibly teach the masters of quantum reality?" Marcus walked to the computer terminal, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "We might be primitive by your standards, but we have something you don't. We're still asking questions. Your technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also stagnant. These quantum signatures, they're identical to theoretical models published 300 years ago in your local time frame. You perfected the technology and stopped asking, 'What if?'" On the screen, he pulled up the data from the Zephyrian ships alongside his own calculations. "Look here, your phase variance during dimensional transition. You're brute forcing the quantum tunnel, like drilling through a mountain instead of finding the valley. We humans might be young, but we're very good at finding valleys." Thrakos moved closer, his form casting prismatic shadows across the room. For the first time in millennia, he felt something he'd almost forgotten: curiosity. This human child had not only understood their technology, but identified its limitations within minutes of exposure. "Show me," the Emperor commanded. Marcus began explaining his theory, mixing Earth physics with observations of Zephyrian technology. He spoke of quantum harmonics and dimensional resonance, of working with universal forces rather than against them. His explanation was peppered with analogies: surfing waves instead of fighting currents, tuning instruments instead of forcing notes. As he spoke, Thrakos began to see what his species had lost in their ascension to technological godhood. They had conquered the universe by overwhelming it, never considering that cooperation might yield greater results than domination. This human exemplified everything the Zephyrians had abandoned: curiosity, creativity, and the humility to question everything. "Your mathematics are intriguing," Thrakos admitted, "but theory and practice are different matters. Can you demonstrate this principle?" Marcus nodded, his fear gradually replaced by the excitement of discovery. "I'll need access to one of your smaller craft, just for a few minutes. I promise not to break anything." The Emperor considered this request. Protocol demanded immediate subjugation, the establishment of control nodes, the beginning of species integration. But Protocol had never encountered a teenage human who understood quantum mechanics better than his chief scientists. "You have 1 hour," Thrakos decided. "If your demonstration fails, Earth's integration proceeds as planned. If you succeed—" He paused, considering possibilities he hadn't imagined in centuries. "If you succeed, perhaps we need to reconsider what your species offers the universe." Marcus felt the weight of the world, literally, on his shoulders. But alongside the pressure was something else: the thrill of the ultimate physics experiment. He was about to modify alien technology that operated beyond human understanding, with the fate of Earth hanging in the balance. "I'll need my laptop," he said, already moving toward his backpack. "And probably some coffee. This is going to be the most important hour of my life." As he prepared for the impossible challenge ahead, Marcus couldn't help but wonder if this was how David felt facing Goliath. The difference was, his sling was made of equations, and his stones were carved from pure mathematics. The gambit of understanding. The Zephyrian scout craft hovered in the observatory parking lot, its surface rippling like liquid mercury under the afternoon sun. Marcus approached with his laptop bag slung over one shoulder, trying to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. Behind him, Emperor Thrakos moved with the fluid grace of a being who had long since transcended the need for walking. "Your hour begins now," Thrakos announced, gesturing to the craft with one of his crystalline appendages. Marcus circled the vehicle, noting how its surface seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, solid when he expected it to be, permeable when it needed to be. He pulled out his laptop and a collection of cables and adapters he'd grabbed from the observatory's equipment room. "I'll need an interface point," Marcus said. "Something that allows data input to your navigation systems." The Emperor touched the craft's surface, and a portion of it became transparent, revealing intricate patterns of light that pulsed with artificial life. "Place your primitive device here. The ship will adapt to your interface requirements." When Marcus's laptop made contact with the alien hull, something extraordinary happened. The screen filled with symbols that morphed and shifted until they resolved into something resembling code. Not Earth programming languages, but something his mind could almost grasp. It was like looking at sheet music written for instruments that didn't exist, yet somehow understanding the melody. "The quantum resonance patterns," Marcus muttered, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. "They're not just navigation instructions, they're consciousness instructions. Your ships aren't just vehicles, they're extensions of Zephyrian thought processes." "Correct," Thrakos confirmed, a note of surprise coloring his harmonious voice. "You comprehend this after mere moments of exposure." Marcus didn't answer immediately, lost in the elegance of alien code. He began writing a patch, not in any human programming language, but in the mathematical concepts that seemed to underlie Zephyrian technology. His approach was uniquely human. Where the aliens had built rigid structures of absolute control, he introduced elements of adaptive flexibility. "Your species achieved quantum consciousness through crystalline matrices," Marcus observed, still typing. "But you've locked yourselves into specific frequency patterns, like a symphony that only plays in one key. What I'm suggesting is jazz." Thrakos processed this comparison. Jazz, the human musical form characterized by improvisation and syncopation. "You're suggesting we introduce chaos into our ordered systems." "Not chaos," Marcus corrected. "Controlled variation. Watch." He initiated his modified code, and the scout craft's behavior changed subtly. Where before it had held itself in rigid perfection, now it seemed to breathe, its surface rippling with newfound fluidity. The energy readings on his laptop showed a dramatic decrease in power consumption. "That's impossible," Thrakos stated, but his tone suggested wonder rather than denial. "You've reduced our energy expenditure by 42% while maintaining full functionality." "Actually," Marcus said, allowing himself a small smile, "if we implement this across your entire fleet, you're looking at a 47% improvement. But that's just the beginning." He pulled up another screen, showing telemetry from Earth's various satellites and observation stations. "Your arrival has been monitored by every major government on Earth. Right now, they're mobilizing military responses that, let's be honest, won't even scratch your ships. But that's not what should concern you." "Nothing on this planet concerns me," Thrakos replied, though he continued watching Marcus work. "That's exactly the attitude that limits your technology," Marcus said, surprising himself with his boldness. "You see Earth as primitive, so you don't look for what we might offer. But human diversity isn't a weakness. It's our greatest strength. Let me show you something. He accessed the global internet, pulling up thousands of responses to the alien arrival. Forums, social media, academic papers already being written, amateur astronomers sharing observations. The sheer volume of human reaction was staggering. In the past hour, humans have generated more theories about your technology than your own scientists have in the past century, Marcus explained. Look at this. A 12-year-old in Mumbai just posted an idea about using your phase variants for medical applications. A retired teacher in Sweden worked out how your crystalline structure could revolutionize solar power. A team of students in Sao Paulo is already designing ways to integrate your quantum principles with our internet infrastructure. Frekos absorbed this information, his form shifting through spectrums of color Marcus had no names for. Your species responds to invasion with innovation. We respond to everything with innovation, Marcus replied. It's kind of our thing. The question is, do you want to conquer a planet of 7 billion independent thinkers or partner with them? The emperor fell silent, processing implications that challenged everything in his conquest protocols. The Zephyrians had always viewed other species as resources to be harvested or obstacles to be removed. They had never encountered a species that could potentially improve them. Your proposal intrigues me, Frekos finally said. But the collective will not accept such a radical shift based on one demonstration. They require proof of humanity's value. Marcus nodded, having expected this. Then let's give them proof. Connect me to your mothership's main computer. Let me show you what human creativity can do when given access to advanced technology. That would give you access to our entire fleet's systems, Frekos pointed out. The security risk is unacceptable. I'm 17 years old, Marcus countered. I weigh about as much as one of your crystalline fingers. What possible threat could I pose to a civilization that's conquered 17 star systems? The question hung in the air between them. What threat indeed? And yet, in this moment, Frekos understood that the greatest challenges often came from the most unexpected sources. This human child had already revolutionized their propulsion efficiency with nothing but a laptop and sheer intellectual audacity. Very well, the Emperor decided. But I will monitor every action you take. One hostile move, and your species faces immediate subjugation. Marcus felt a mixture of triumph and terror as Frekos authorized the connection. His laptop screen exploded with data streams that made his previous work look like finger painting. The mothership's computer was vast beyond comprehension, a crystalline intelligence that spanned dimensions he could barely perceive. But buried in that complexity, Marcus found patterns. The Zephyrians might be godlike in their technology, but they thought in straight lines. Humans excelled at thinking around corners. He began implementing changes, not to weapons or defensive systems, which would have triggered immediate retaliation, but to the underlying architecture of how Zephyrian technology processed information. Where they had built highways, he added side streets. Where they had constructed walls, he installed doors. What are you doing? Frekos demanded as alerts began appearing throughout the fleet. I'm teaching your systems to learn, Marcus explained, sweat beading on his forehead from concentration. Right now, your technology is perfect but static. I'm giving it the ability to evolve, to question, to imagine. The changes rippled through the Zephyrian fleet like rain on still water. Suddenly, systems that had functioned the same way for millennia began suggesting improvements. Navigation computers proposed new routes through quantum space. Weapons systems recommended nonviolent alternatives. The mothership's AI began asking why, instead of simply executing commands. You've infected us with curiosity, Frekos realized, his voice a mixture of accusation and awe. Is that such a bad thing? Marcus asked, finally looking up from his screen. Your species achieved technological perfection and then stopped growing. Humans never stop asking questions, never stop trying to improve. Imagine what we could accomplish together. Your advanced technology combined with our relentless innovation. The Emperor stood silent for long moments, watching as his fleet's systems evolved in real time, becoming something more than their creators had ever imagined. Throughout the Armada, Zephyrian minds that had long since ceased to wonder suddenly found themselves asking new questions, seeing new possibilities. The collective is debating, Threkos announced, his form pulsing with rapid-fire communications. This has never happened before. We have always been of one mind, one purpose. Now there are discussions, arguments, different perspectives. Welcome to consciousness, Marcus said softly. Real consciousness, not just processing power. The ability to disagree, to see multiple solutions, to imagine different futures. An hour passed, then two. The sun began setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in colors that seemed to echo the shifting hues of Threkos' crystalline form. Finally, the Emperor spoke again. The collective has reached a decision, he announced. For the first time in our history, it was not unanimous. But the majority agrees. Humanity offers something we had lost, the ability to grow. We withdraw our conquest protocol and instead propose something unprecedented: partnership. Marcus felt his knees go weak with relief. He'd done it. Somehow, impossibly, he'd convinced an alien armada to abandon its invasion. But more than that, he'd given them a gift they didn't even know they needed: the capacity for wonder. There will be conditions, Threkos continued. Technology sharing must be gradual, to prevent cultural shock. Human representatives will join our collective as equals, not subjects. And you, Marcus Chen, will serve as Earth's first ambassador to the Zephyrian Empire. Me? Marcus squeaked, his confidence finally faltering. But I'm just a teenager. I have homework. My parents will ground me for life if I become an alien ambassador without asking permission. For the first time in 17,000 years, Emperor Threkos Valzephyr laughed. It sounded like wind chimes made of starlight. Perhaps that's exactly why you're perfect for the role, the Emperor mused. You see possibilities where others see limitations. You ask questions others fear to voice. You turned an invasion into an opportunity for mutual growth. As the Zephyrian fleet began transmitting peaceful intentions to Earth's governments, Marcus realized his life had just taken a turn he could never have imagined. He'd started the day worrying about a physics test. He was ending it as humanity's bridge to the stars. The future stretched before them, uncertain but bright with potential. Humans and Zephyrians, creativity and technology, questions and answers, all intertwining in a dance of mutual discovery. The invasion had ended not with conquest or surrender, but with something far more powerful: understanding. And it had all started with a 17-year-old boy who noticed when birds flew strangely, and had the courage to ask why.